ounce of business, the show all about small business jobs and entrepreneurship. We know it is imperative for corporate leaders to improve their ability to communicate, collaborate, manage stress, meet the challenge of the workplace in a world that's frankly becoming more and more unpredictable by the day. And that's what our next guest talks about in The Steadfast Leader. Control anxiety, make confident decisions, and focus your team using the new science of leadership. And I'm thrilled to be joined by one of the co-authors. That's Dr. Geoffrey VanderPal. Geoffrey, welcome to the program. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So this is a really unique read because you draw on the fields of neuroscience and business to transform the way people think about leaders and leadership. And you talk about a lot of different stuff, but let's start in the very, very beginning. Geoffrey, why did you write this book? Why are you so passionate about this topic?
Well, let me start with a little story of how this got started. So my co-author and I, my co-author being Dr. Randy Brazy, he's a licensed psychiatrist and somatic experience practitioner. My background, I have a doctorate degree in business and finance. I've worked in industry. I've run my own businesses as an entrepreneur for years. And also I teach finance and various types of business and leadership courses at universities around the world. So we became friends years ago. And about 3 years ago, we were having dinner. And I asked him questions about what he was doing in terms of somatic experience and what that was like and how he deals with working with patients and trauma. I found it fascinating. I find psychology fascinating. We started this in-depth conversation over dinner, and by the end of the dinner, we decided to collaborate on writing books and materials combining the elements of polyvagal theory, neuroception, and these areas of science, psychology, and morphing that also with leadership and better business decision making. That's really how all this came about. That was the genesis of this whole idea. So the book is the first of its kind, The Steadfast Leader, and I think it's one of the reasons why McGraw-Hill jumped on publishing the book, because it is so unique in the approach that it takes, unlike a lot of other leadership books.
Absolutely. Published just about a month ago, and it's really perfect timing, especially as we have this conversation December 2023. It's certainly a hot topic. And Geoffrey, this is not just an outcome of the pandemic. I know you've been alluding in your story, which by the way is fascinating. This is something that's frankly it's an ongoing struggle, and something I know you've been working on together with Randy for a long time. Is that right?
That's correct. For the last about 3 years now, we've been working on this project. We've even published papers in some academic journals as well, connecting the dots between the work that we're doing in psychology, which is the polyvagal theory as the underpinning of it, also to help explain some elements of cognitive psychology and how that influences leadership and business decision-making.
Absolutely. And I know you're a professor in the Master of Science in Finance program at Purdue University Global, where you teach financial planning related courses and have taught really across the world on many topics, but also over 20 years as an entrepreneur, founding many ventures and the author of several great books, including Invincible Investing. So really, really interesting background. And part of what I found fascinating in the book is that you indeed talk about what defines the qualities of a great leader, but also achieving financial success. So you're combining a lot of topics in one. Geoffrey, what do you want listeners to know about the book? What can they expect?
Well, what we found was that the elements that we're presenting in the business arena covers a lot of areas. It covers everything from business decision-making, of course, leadership, management. It also covers HR and HR management. It covers areas of finance and financial biases, even into project management. So it covers a broad area of business is what we have found. And I think at every level, whether you're an employee, team member, leading a team, managing a large organization or a small organization, you're an entrepreneur, I really think at every level that this material can be very helpful in helping people be better leaders and manage themselves and their decision-making much more effectively.
Absolutely. So, as I've said several times on this program, many of the amazing authors like yourself, Geoffrey, that come on the program, I really hesitate to call their works books because really it's more of a guide. You talk a lot about the connection between instinctive leadership and, again, how people can develop. But, Geoffrey, one of the things that I know I hear from our listeners frequently is they think, gosh, that's only relevant in large Fortune 100 companies, but my small business, my entrepreneurial venture, these concepts aren't applicable. Geoffrey, what's your response?
Well, as an entrepreneur myself, having spent many years as an entrepreneur running various types of businesses and creating various types of businesses, I can tell you that the information that we've put together would be certainly very helpful for entrepreneurs to better manage their businesses and to make better decisions along the way. I mean, entrepreneurs, they have a lot to carry on their shoulders, and they have to be a lot of things at any given period of time because of their responsibilities. And so being able to manage the stress, being able to manage and make better decision making is imperative for entrepreneurs to be more successful.
Absolutely. And in the book, you sort of follow a fictitious young executive named Oliver Green. And the book follows Oliver so readers can see how these concepts build upon one another and apply experiences to their own leadership approach and challenges. It's really, really fascinating. But we're going to have to cut to our break in just a moment. When we come back, we're going to talk about a couple of the maps that are highlighted in the book, as well as some of the examples that are provided. We talked about Oliver, but this is a great read. It's called The Steadfast Leader, and it's something that certainly all of our listeners, again, regardless, as you just heard a moment ago, regardless of the size of your organization, regardless of what kind of leader you are, you want to control anxiety, make confident decisions, and focus your team using the new science of leadership. That's exactly what we're chatting about with Dr. Geoffrey VanderPal. Geoffrey, I know we're going to have you back on in just a moment. Don't touch that dial. You're listening to Get Down to Business. We'll be right back. And we are back. We are chatting with Dr. Geoffrey VanderPal, who together with Dr. Randy Brazy has written The Steadfast Leader, Control Anxiety, Make Confident Decisions, Focus Your Team Using the New Science of Leadership. Geoffrey, again, thanks so much for joining us. This is a fantastic read. And as I mentioned before the break, this book focuses on, you and your colleague have focused on three interrelated maps with different objectives. A personal profile map, a triggers and glimmers map, and a regulating resources map. What is important? What do we need to know about those three areas?
Well, the important thing is understanding the different states that we are in psychologically. So what we found was using polyvagal theory, that was developed by Dr. Stephen Porges back in the early 1990s, is that to really explain how the underpinnings of cognitive psychology affect some of our decision making, we have to dig a little deeper into our more primitive brain. And what we found was that there's really three states in which affect our behavior from a more kind of a primal basis. The first state is called the ventral vagal state. And this is basically what we call the safe or social state. And this is where you're calm, you feel safe, you're socially engaged, you feel comfortable. That's the state that you want to be in as much as you can. Obviously, with life, those states can certainly change. When under a lot of stress, those states can change. And the next level down from there would be what we call the sympathetic state, and that's the fight or flight state. So that's usually triggered with threats or stress. Your body's preparing for some kind of defensive action or to flee from a threat, basically. And there's also, it can affect physiologically other elements like your heart rate can increase, your blood pressure, certainly a heightened alertness. And that can trigger people being more irritable, more aggression, maybe less socially engaging, more aggressive in some ways. And then lastly, there's the dorsal vagal state. This is what we call the shutdown state. And this is often referred to as an overwhelming stress or danger when flight or fight is not viable, or at least not perceived to be viable. And this can have a profound effect because it really the person's shutting down emotionally. So understanding these different states and how that applies and how you can use this in decision making is critically important. So for example, if you're leading an employee or a group of individuals, and let's say one of those employees, you've noticed possibly from their facial expressions, physical expressions, tone in their voice, their actions in general, that they might be in a dorsal state, meaning they're shutting down. They're not involved at all. They're totally disengaged. How do you get them back into a ventral state, into a state in which they feel safe and they're more socially involved and regulated, where they're literally more receptive to ideas and getting things done? And so a lot of it has to do with cues of danger and safety, and making sure that in the workplace that you're trying to take away the dangers, so to speak, and create more safety or cues of safety in order to bring those individuals or groups from either a sympathetic or dorsal state into that ventral state for optimum communication, optimum efficiency, and performance.
Absolutely. I've been chatting with Dr. Geoffrey VanderPal, and he's the co-author of this great read, The Steadfast Leader, Control Anxiety, Make Confident Decisions, and Focus Your Team Using the New Science of Leadership. Really, really enjoyed the conversation, Geoffrey. We could talk for hours, I'm sure, and hopefully we'll have that opportunity to do that sometime soon. Book, The Steadfast Leader. How can we find it, and how can we get in touch with you?
Well, our website for our book is steadfastleader.com. The title of our book, and our website for our consulting group is neuroconsultinggroup.com.
Fantastic. Geoffrey VanderPal, thank you so much for joining us. Happy holidays to you, and definitely encourage all of our listeners to pick up a copy of the book. It's a great read, great gift. That's a wrap for us here on the show, all about small business jobs and entrepreneurship. We'll be back next Sunday at 6 p.m. right here on AM 560 The Answer to Success. Let's get down to business.